And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. Now, if you don't know me by now, sometimes I get a thought in my head and I just, for whatever reason, I can't shake it. And I wasn't going to originally do a live tonight, but I watched Danny Phantom's most recent video and it got the wheels in my brain spinning a little bit. And in Danny Phantom's video, he talked about like how there's a lot of low prices right now on the market, and he goes back to only as far as 2017, and he talks about some of the prices then for some products, and talks about how people really weren't buying products even for, at one point Danny Phantom talks about 74-cent packs. I don't really remember 74-cent packs in 2017, but I'm sure they were there. And the problem is I probably was just looking over them, and it got me thinking, and it was something I was when I guess kind of like when I'll be sitting and just thinking. Once in a while I'll have the what if conversation. And I'm sure everybody out there watching this at home, I'm sure a lot of times you'll be sitting just thinking about Pokemon and you do the what if conversation. The what if you were super super actively engaged in Pokemon at the lowest periods of hype, the lowest prices. What if you had your thought process that you had right now? What if you had it then? And it's that what if. And to be honest with you, to be doing the what if, to be living in the, always be like questioning things from the past, things that at this point in current time, you have no control over that. And what if conversations can be, in a way, like pretty detrimental, but, this is my channel, so sometimes we could do some really detrimental shit. So that's what we're going to do on today's video, do the what if conversation, because there's no way I'm the only person out there that's ever just sat and said, what if? What if I wasn't stupid when I got back in the hobby? And, maybe stupid's probably like a poor choice of words, but I look back when I got into the hobby, and I always do the what if. Because I got back what for most people would be probably relatively long ago. And one of the shittiest parts of my backstory is while I might have got back a while ago, which was 2012, I got back, but at the time, I don't have a great story. I think a lot of people hear the timeline you got back into the hobby and they just instantly go to first edition booster boxes, PSA 10 cheap Charizards, trophy cards, tons of sealed product, really high end, near mint. Everything was easily sourceable at the time. Tons of first edition cards, just whatever you wanted. The pickings was yours and you had it all. And that's the shitty part of my backstory where it wasn't like that. I wasn't going after the highest end of the hobby. And to be honest with you, I was going after for what a lot of people would consider maybe the lowest end of the hobby. I was going after unlimited Raichus and shit. This is stuff I've said on this channel now a million times. And it's a shitty story. I wish I could sit here and lie to you and be like, yeah, when I got back in, I took every single penny out of my bank account. I maxed out every single credit card I had, and all I did was I picked up, the most high-end, Japanese trophy cards and 70,000 point Umbreons and first edition Charizards and base set boxes and Sky Rage boxes and first ed Neo Destiny boxes and all this. And that's not the reality. But there is a part of me that always thinks about the what if. And, I think the biggest problem with the what if, and the biggest problem that I think a lot of people don't really understand is, it's easy for everybody right now in the now to look back on prices then and justify those purchases. The problem is when you're living in the today and you're justifying former prices, you have to keep in mind that at the time, even though in relative today, those prices all seem really cheap, all those prices were still the highest end of the hobby. And I think everybody just sees the track record of Pokemon and they see how everything has played out. So they can now play the what if. But the reality of the fact is, in the moment, all the prices, even though prices might not be today's prices, at the time, they were still the most expensive cards in the hobby. Like an example being one of the easy cards everybody's really going to point to is a PSA 10 first edition Shadowless Art. Like, that's probably a card that a lot of people are going to think of instantly. But even at the time, that card was still the most expensive card in the hobby. So you would still have to literally pay up to get that card. So even though it might be cheap for today's prices, it's not cheap in relative to the time. And shout out to MK Poke CC, one of the great lives I had on this channel. If you guys haven't got a chance to watch that, go into your YouTube search bar right now and just type in my channel and type in MK Poke CC. One of my favorite stories in this hobby, and I've talked about it a million different times by now on this channel, but one of the coolest stories and one of my favorites is the people that were actually doing the what if. When we say what if, well, what about the people that were actually doing it? So, the guy Michael, MK Poke CC, in 2009, he was a junior in high school, and he was washing dishes for a summer job. And he saved up all his money washing dishes throughout the entire summer, and he was able to save up right around $2,000, $1,800, $2,000, and he went out and he bought a SSB Mewtwo, number 3 trainer, so Super Secret Battle Mewtwo, number 3 trainer at the time. It had a PSA 10 Pop 0. He was the first person to ever grade that card in a PSA 10, and he saved up his money washing dishes for a summer job, and that card at the time cost him $1,800. And at the time, there was a seller who was selling the SSB 1, 2, and 3, and he couldn't afford the 1 or 2, but he could afford the number 3. And that was 2009, and that was $1,800. And he did acquire that card raw for $1,800, and he was the first person in the history of this hobby to ever grade one of those cards a PSA 10. Great purchase by him. Fast forward to today, that's a 6-figure plus card. Anytime you're talking SSB number 3 Mewtwo in a PSA 10, that's a $100,000 plus card. That is the highest end of the hobby, even still to this day. Obviously, it's not the highest end, but you're going to put SSB Mewtwo's in the conversation of highest end cards in this hobby. Like, it doesn't take much until you get to that card. And he did that with $1,800 as a junior in high school. And the best part of that story, and when you talk to him about that story, he didn't have a lot of money at the time. $1,800 was like his entire bank account, So it goes back to that what if. And the conversation of the what if is, well, if one of them, yeah, sure, it's a 6-figure card, fast forward to 2024. But in 2009, when he was doing that purchase and then ended up buying that card, could you justify draining your entire bank account to buy a very, very niche card? Something that there wasn't a ton of demand for. It wasn't like that card was posted for $1,800 online and then it was just snap purchase. It's not like that at all. That card sat there at $1,800 because the person who was selling it was asking above market price. He had to pay up to get that card. Again, keeping in mind, that is an extremely rare card. That is not a common card. But it's one of those great stories. So when we all do the what if, well, what if when I got back in, I wasn't buying unlimited Raichus? What if I was just going after the highest end? And I feel like a lot of people, they like to sit and have that conversation or that thought process in their mind because they know of the very few handful of stories, And at the time, people doing those buys, when you go back, you could kind of count those people in a way on 2 hands. The people really doing the highest end. This is way before the E4 days. You're going back to the Poke Gym days and a very, very small handful of people. And the what if stories too, right? One of my, I wouldn't call it a favorite what if stories, but it's a good learning lesson for a lot of people, is a person that I hope we can get back on this channel again in the near term, because he's just a wealth of knowledge and just has so much experience and such a good insight into this hobby. But it's Joe Echo-Based Collectibles. He's somebody that's been on my channel a few times, but he's, this is a guy who was in May of 2003, was at the last Wizard of the Coast Fan Appreciation Tournament. he ended up placing top 16 at the first ever Worlds. He was big into Pokemon from times most people weren't. He was big into Pokemon from like 2000 all the way up to 2007, 2008 timeline. He got out right after like, or maybe right around Power Keepers is when he got out. So literally right around the end of that Nintendo timeline, which is a timeline a lot of people weren't involved in it. And you listen to the Joe's stories. Joe's stories are the what ifs, but Joe printed out like the eBay listings of the items that he wanted to buy. Talk about just an absolute kick to the nuts to have those. Keep in mind, printing out stuff in early 2000, 2002, that was his inkjet printer, and he might have printed out one of those things with color ink by accident. He accidentally went through half of his ink cartridge, and it cost a lot of money to replace that. We're going back early 2000s at the time. And Joe would print out eBay listings of the cards that he wanted to buy. And the sad part of it is, even though he has all those hard copies of those eBay listings, he didn't buy them. He just printed them out because he wanted them, but he thought, okay, well, nobody's buying these cards right now. And we're talking the highest end of the hobby. We're talking half art, Pikachu trophies and stuff like this. We're talking cards today. Again, those six-figure cards that Joe is printing out, looking at dollar amounts of those cards, most of them were very, very, very low four-figure cards. And Joe has the original eBay printouts and just watching them. And so Joe has to live that what if too. What if he bought all those cards? And make no mistake about it, like, Joe has one of the most... I know he's burned through a lot of that collection, buying and selling, but Joe has one of the more amazing collections that I've ever seen. When you talk about, because Joe was a player, so where most people have one or two of a card, Joe had, play sets of entire master sets, And, I mean, Joe, I really wish he sent it to PSA. I think Joe thinks the same thing. But even his Rayquaza Gold Star and stuff, he graded it a 9.5 at CGC, literally during like the 3.7 cert timeline. And you can still see his Rayquaza Gold Star, pop up here and there because it's very easily identifiable. It's a old blue label Rayquaza Gold Star. I'm sure that 9.5 Rayquaza Gold Star has been crossed over to a CGC 10 after they change their grading scales and allow you to upgrade the 9.5 to the 10. So maybe that card isn't going to be as easily trackable anymore, but, that was Joe's card. Joe had Pop Series 5 Umbreons, Pop Series 5 Espeons that he was able to open himself and trade. And, listen to the stories of Joe when he talks about, one of the things one of the questions I asked him was just about Dragon Frontiers. And I said, Joe, during Dragon Frontiers, like, obviously Gold Stars was still pretty popular. Really, Gold Stars were super playable, especially when you think about older Worlds decks and you think about, like, the Gold Star Jolteon and stuff. But when I asked him about Dragon Frontiers and I asked him about the Gold Star Charizard, the question was, were a lot of people, like, clamoring for this card? And Joe had a pretty simple answer to it. He's like, well, yeah, at the time, people wanted it because it was still a Gold Star, it was still a Charizard, but people weren't valuing it the way you would think people would value such like a high-end card. It was still, pricey, but Joe was able to just trade in order to get that card. And that's how Joe was able to get his Gold Star Charizard. But everybody just keeps going back to the what if. It's like, well, what if you can go back and you had your thought process that you have now today? But it's just not a fair conversation because you're cheating at that point because you already know the future. You already know how everything is going to play out. And well, why do I bring up this whole conversation? Why am I doing the what if? Why does this matter? Well, because of what I mentioned earlier in today's video, Danny Phantom's video, where he talks about how there's just so much product right now, and we're starting to see a lot of stuff go on clearance right now. We're starting to see a lot of low prices. And the problem is, when everything is booming, you hear so many people come out of the woodwork and they say, if prices were back to pre-boom levels, I would buy up all this stuff. Or, oh man, I wish I could pick up a ton of like sealed product because I believe in modern Pokemon. I would totally buy a lot of sealed product, but the problem is prices for everything are going up, so I can't even get in at good buying opportunities. I can't get in at good entry points. Well, like, guess what? Right now, today, everything, for the most part, when it comes to a lot of cards, there's great buying opportunities right now, especially when it comes to sealed modern product. Sealed modern, you go on eBay right now. Earlier today, I saw Paradox Riff on eBay. I don't know if it's part of like the Pokemon uh, birthday like celebration. I know that auction's going on Tuesday, and we'll probably do a live on Tuesday. Maybe we'll do a super late night live, and I'll just do that live stream right at midnight. I might have to stay up a little late because of work, but to like look at some of those higher end prices for Pokemon Day, because there's probably going to be some really good deals that are going on. But I saw a Paradox Rift today for $79. This was like 79.85 or something, and it was like, okay, well, how come this stuff is even available right now? How come everybody's not just coming in and gobbling up all this stuff? Because where are all those people that said, well, when prices go back down, I'm going to be there buying up all of it? And the problem is come 5 years from now, people are going to look back on today and say, what if? It's just like Danny Phantom when he made his video. The prices he was showing for stuff was during 2017. 2017, the stuff that was really selling for the cheapest was a lot of like the later XY stuff. The stuff that people really didn't want anymore. Your breakthroughs, your breakpoints, your evolutions. Yes, I know everybody out there wants to love their thousand or whatever evolution booster boxes are $800+ now, and single packs of evolution are $20+, but go back to 2017, everybody had their fill of evolutions by 2017, and then we would continue to watch evolution stay stagnant from that 2017 timeline all the way up to 2020, and it took one of the biggest black swan events we will potentially ever see in our life to really finally eat up all that supply from distribution till eventually no longer available at distribution, and secondary prices like went crazy. But it goes back to, in the moment, nobody ever wants this shit, and I don't think this ever changes. So the problem is the what if. When people go back, and in a way, I feel like people look nostalgically back at points in the hobby that they weren't even around for, So they're in a nostalgic way. They look at prices and they do the what if conversation. The reality for a lot of booster boxes is, you don't really see booster boxes truly crash to like crazy buying opportunities. Like, I mean, this is the difference too. One, prices were cheaper for a lot of these booster boxes inherently, but the problem was they were a lot cheaper from distribution too. Right now, people are picking up booster boxes from distribution, depending on your relationship with distribution, depending on your allocation numbers, you're still looking at, say, between $90 and $95 a booster box. Rewind a couple years back, you're looking at booster boxes at between the $75 to $78 range, and then, Rusty TCA Gaming talked about it on his most recent pack break. If you didn't get a chance to watch that live, go back and watch that. But Rusty talks about it not in the too distant past, like putting up distribution against each other, where one distributor would offer them, $77 booster boxes shipped, and then the other, his other person he has with distribution offered Rusty 79 per booster box, and Rusty just, in the most respectful way possible, just said, hey, I appreciate you offering me to pick these boxes up for 79, but this other person that I have an account with is selling me booster boxes for $77, and he just pays shipping on them. And then the one that was originally offering him 75, or offering him 79, came back and said, we will match that other distributor. And his first distribution, he was getting them for $77 of booster boxes, but he had to get a minimum quantity order of one case. So in order to get that 77 per booster box, he had to order a minimum of one case. And then the other distributor said, we will not only match that 77, but we won't make you do a one single case limit. We will offer you the opportunity to do as simple as one booster box. And also, we will throw in free shipping. And he just talked about this on his most recent live, but like he was literally able to put distribution in competition with each other in order to get that lowest price. So even though people will mention lower booster box prices, you have to keep in mind, like, when you can get booster boxes for around that $75 to $77 range, your prices you now have to sell those booster boxes for can be a lot less than when you have to literally spend close to $20 more to pick them up at current pricing today. So just do keep that in mind a little bit. I think that conversation does get lost a little bit when people go back and they look at booster box prices, especially when they look at booster box prices at the time of release. And like I said, it is an important conversation that does get lost in the shuffle sometimes. That, yeah, maybe you could have picked them up for $95 a box, which might seem cheap, but they were picking them up for 77 from distribution. So even though they weren't retiring off of selling booster boxes for $95 to $100, it wasn't as painful as somebody who was picking up a booster box today from distribution for $95 and then forced to sell that same booster box for $89. There's a huge difference, and the nuances of that conversation does sadly get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But going back to the what if conversation is, while people will look fondly back on a timeline where they weren't really actively engaged in this hobby and they weren't able to do anything, they will be living in the moment today, and they'll just have the same exact conversation as they would have if they were there in 2017 or 2014 or 2011 or 2008 or 2004 or 2000. The conversation is always the same. It's always, well, prices are low now, so they're going to stay low. And that this time, it's different. And that's a conversation people always have. They always have it's different this time. And it's always different until it's not, right? Does that make sense? Like, it's always different. Like, right now, prices are really low. But it's different this time because everything is getting printed to oblivion, and demand's dropping. During Sword and Shield, everything is getting printed to oblivion, demand's dropping. Sun and Moon, like early Sun and Moon, your Guardians Risings and sets like that, everything is being printed to oblivion, demand is dropping. Go back to late XY with Evolutions, everything Evolutions, Steam Siege, Fates Collide, those last three sets, everything is getting printed to oblivion, demand is dying, right? Go back to late Black and White, Plasma Storm, Plasma Freeze, Plasma Blast, Legendary Treasures. You think about Legendary Treasures and you think about true $1 booster packs with Legendary Treasures. You can go on Amazon and pick up $1 booster packs of Legendary Treasures. But that was the thing. During Black and White, everything was printed to oblivion. Demand was dying. You go back to your Nintendo timeline when Echo-Based Collectibles was, trading for Gold Star Charizards, and, with the exception of the big heavy hitters, everything was printed to oblivion. Nobody wants these cards. You go to late Wizard of the Coast, late WotC, after the hype had died. You had your really, really heavy hype, at the beginning of WotC. Base set, million, bazillion, quadrillion, shout out to Ken Golden, 1 octillion packs of base set were printed. Tons of demand. Jungle, Fossil, ton of demand. Base set 2, it dries up. Team Rocket starts to go down a little bit. The Neos, it starts to drop a little bit until eventually you get to the end of that WotC timeline. And you talk about Legendary Collection and Expedition and Aquapolis and Skyridge. And guess what? The demand wasn't there anymore. And the reason why is the same thing everyone said. The demand is no longer there. Everything is printed to oblivion. Do you hear it? Every timeline. It's the same exact conversation being had over and over. It's like the movie Groundhog's Day. Shout out to Bill Murray. Great actor, Bill Murray. Groundhog's Day. Great movie, but it's just every day kind of repeats itself. And so back to the what if conversation. Everybody always says, well, what if? What if I was buying then? It's like, well, what if you were there? The problem is if you were there, it would be the same as if you're in the hobby right now today. You're not going to be picking up this stuff because there's no demand. Everything's being printed to oblivion. So, and that's a problem. Everybody wants to do the what if because they see the today. And it's just like even a lot of, there's a real big conversation to be had that is it's a super jaded conversation. It's constantly pulled out of context all the time when people talk about, Sword and Shield is all these great buying opportunities, when in reality, like, Sword and Shield, people make it really, really sound easy, right? Like the what if. Well, what if you just, everybody was part of Sword and Shield. Like, why didn't you just buy a ton of this stuff? Like, everyone loved Sword and Shield. Everybody flooded back in. It's like, well, why didn't you just buy more of this? Like the what if? What if you just bought every single set of Sword and Shield? Why didn't you just buy more of this? And the problem with that conversation is, well, people will quote $100 booster boxes. They'll quote, Fusion Strike and Battle Styles and Chill and Rain at $80. And they'll quote Evolving Skies at $95. But that's a really, really unfair conversation because you got to think of at the time, right? Like, all those prices are not possible unless all those reprints happen, right? So, in order to talk about a set like Battle Styles or a set like Chill and Rain, and to quote $80 booster boxes for Chill and Rain, you have to quote Chill and Rain at $80 after the third reprint. So, to say, oh, look at how well you could have did on Chill and Rain, it's not fair because, there was buying when it was first released, $160 at release for Chill and Rain. So then if everybody bought in at Chill and Rain at $160, you would have had to potentially have held on to Chill and Rain booster box from 2001 all the way to now. And you have finally gotten to the point in the hobby where maybe you're breaking even. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound as good as quoting Chill and Rain at $80 a booster box. And it's the same thing with, like Battle Styles. Everybody shits on Battle Styles now today because Battle Styles, ton of supply, ETBs crashes, booster box prices crashed. But during that first wave, like, prices were still really high. You talk about a lot of people that had distribution at the time selling out of Battle Styles at $150, $160. And then if you were one of those people who bought Battle Styles at $150, $160 again, that's a 2021 product. Yeah, the wait all of 2021, 22, 23, and then finally into early 2024, and maybe you finally broken even on that booster box. But it doesn't sound as sexy as saying $80. And then, like, there is a caveat to all those conversations too, right? And so when people look back on all this stuff, they do the what if. They do the, well, what if I got in at all these booster boxes when they hit their bottom? Especially like Evolving Skies and stuff. When Evolving Skies hit their bottom of 95, there's a problem with all that. Is while prices for all that stuff dropped, it's the what if conversation. What if I got in then? What if I just maxed out all my credit cards and remortgaged my house and I just bought a fucking tractor trailer truck full of Evolving Skies at $95 a booster box, and I just had a tractor trailer truck back up to my garage and I just unloaded 1,000,000 pallets right into my garage. Like, the what if. And it's the problem is it's so easy to play Monday morning quarterback after the fact. But it's just like today. When you look at a lot of this Scarlet and Violet stuff, it's like, well, if everybody wants to play the what if at the lowest prices, it's like, well, what happens with all this modern stuff? How come everybody's not piling into it? And it's because there's just the same conversation is constantly going on. Just like Battle Styles. Fusion Strike, Chillin' Rain. Still one of my favorite videos I ever made. As I walk through the valley of the $79.95 booster box, I fear no evil. That's when I picked up my position of Chillin' Rain because I believed in it as a set because it had dropped below $80, which, even though that is one of the best takes I've ever had, like recently in this hobby, especially when it came to modern product because of how good Chillin' Rain has played out. It's also ironically one of my worst takes I ever had because I buried all my money into Chilling Rain when at the same exact time I could have spent just $15 more per booster box and bought Evolving Skies because Evolving Skies on the same day was selling for 95. So yes, I did really good with Chill and Rain, but the other option is the what if in this conversation. The what if I didn't just buy the sub $80 booster box because we weren't expecting that? What if I just buried it into the $95 booster box, but it's that what if? And then the conversation during that time, even though I was picking up Chill and Rain a lot, some people were having, well, this stuff isn't going to rise in the near term because there's so much of this. Demand has dried off, oversupply, prices aren't going to go up. And then fast forward to today, prices for all that stuff has gone up. And then it's the same conversation that's going to be had today with all the Scarlet and Violet stuff. It's like, well, all this Scarlet and Violet stuff is going to stay stagnant for a long time. Eventually it's going to start to turn around. The problem with a lot of this Scarlet and Violet stuff and the things that I am worried about is what happens if we get reprints of any of this stuff. Like, we don't know which thing is going to get reprinted, but then it's the question of if we do get a reprint, like, how much will it crash price? And if it doesn't crash price, how long will this stuff be stagnant for? But did you see it? I just did it again. The conversations that I had, my worries about Scarlet and Violet, are the same worries that everyone had with every single set I just mentioned earlier in today's video. Do you see it? Do you see like why the what if conversation? Wow, it might be fun to sit on your couch at home and just in your head you play the scenario through the what if. The what if I just was back in this hobby? What if I in 2003, what if I was super actively engaged and I was just putting away cases of all these booster boxes? You know, the reality is you can do the what if because it's fun for you, but the reality is nobody was doing that, and nobody would do that, and you probably would have been called crazy at the time. And that's why the what if conversation it dies so quickly when you have it, because even though in your head it's only reason you can do the what if conversation now today is because you know for a fact that everything played out extremely well. And I mean that's the problem, right? That's why this is my late night rant. You know, I had watched Danny's video today and I was just like, you know, watching it, going back, and, you know, well, I don't remember 74-cent booster packs. I remember a lot of the things he was talking about, a lot of those prices. And I was sitting there listening to Danny's video, and I just was doing in my head, I was like, what if? What if I just bought that? What if I knew it was a good price at the time. What if I just bought all that shit? But I was never like the way I was, like, engaged in this hobby. And that was just not how I ever, like, thought. I never really was looking at stuff in that sort of mindset of just like, oh, let's just hoard this to the absolute crazy and then stash it away with the, you know, it's like doing the what if of Rudy's bathroom. And it's well, what if I just stashed all this stuff through in the extra bathroom and then hopefully just given enough time, all this stuff is going to price appreciate on me. Rudy's bathroom was not he was not a willing participant in that. While it worked out great, he wasn't a willing participant in it. The Rudy bathroom came out of necessity and a need to just bury this stuff in the corner because it was worthless. He didn't want to do that. Does that make sense? Like, the Rudy's bathroom I mean, he walked out of the Rudy bathroom like doing really great on the other end. But in the moment, it was a terrible decision, and he lost his ass. Because all that product, the reason why it went in the bathroom, the reason why it sat in, you know, all those cardboard boxes and it was so many loose packs? Because he was forced to break down that product because he couldn't sell it. Like, the market had dropped on all that stuff. So he could have, well, I mean, he could have in sense sold that stuff, but he would have been forced to sell all of it at a loss. And then it goes back to today, and it's like, well, he didn't want to sell all that stuff then because he's going to take a loss. And then you look at all the stuff that's selling today, all the Scarlet and Violet stuff, and you see what stuff is selling at, even at pre-release. And everybody's selling this stuff at a loss. It's like, well, why aren't all these people just doing the Rudy bathroom? Well, so everybody who is currently picking up, you know, Scarlet and Violet base, Paradox Rift, Obsidian Flames, like, why are they not just Rudy bathroom and all this stuff? Why don't they just shove it in the bathroom? And I think you know the answer for that, right? It's like they're not doing it because it's different this time. Because prices are going to stay stagnant. It's the same conversation that Rudy was having when he put everything in his bathroom. You could have the exact word for word conversation today that Rudy was having in 2017, but just change the name of the packs from Generations and change the name. Instead of saying, I just shoved a shitload of Generation packs in my bathroom and a shitload of Fates Collide packs and a shitload of, like, you know, Steam Siege packs in my bathroom. Instead of just saying that, replace the word Steam Siege with Obsidian Flames. Replace the word Generations with Paldean Fates. You know, you could just quickly change the name for it, and the conversations are exactly the same. It's playing out exactly the same. But everybody's going to tell you this time is different. And then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people will be doing the what if conversation again. It's like, oh, I remember when Paradox Rift was selling for $80 a booster box on eBay. I remember that. Why the fuck didn't I just pick up a bunch of cases of this stuff? And they're going to, in 10 years from now, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, that was probably a good plan. Or maybe it's different in 10 years. Maybe in 10 years from now, they go, you know what? Can't believe it. Scarlet and Violet was the fucking set that was the sets that finally broke the camel's back. Never thought it was possible. Pokemon, you know, the problem is you today you don't know what 5-10 years in the future how it plays out, right? But in 10 years from now, it'll be so easy for people to go back and do the what if conversation. The same way it's easy for you today to go back and do the what if conversation. And that's a problem. Conversations and you're going to learn that about Pokemon. The conversations are the same every single day. Set after set, release after release, the conversations never change. The thoughts are always the same. The feelings are always the same. Does it change? Doesn't change. Do we change? We don't change. Does anything change? Nothing changes. Maybe this is just purgatory for all of us, right? Just, it's not heaven, it's not hell, it's just purgatory. It's just living in a cycle that's doomed to repeat itself into perpetuity, into foreverness, from now to the end of days. Here we are. Listen, guys, if you didn't know, you got to be careful. When I label titles of my videos as Late Night PK Rant, and that last word is rant, if you don't like rants, you got to run for the hills. And for that, I cannot help you. For that, I am not sorry. The warnings was out there. It was in the title of the video. PK Rant. Listen, guys, I have to go to bed. I had this thought in my head. Thanks a lot, Danny Phantom, for your fucking video. You really got the thought going in my brain, and I had to get it out. I had to do just verbally express myself. But listen, guys, if you tuned in for a super late PK Rant, appreciate every single one of you guys. Do me a favor, if you enjoy these videos, hit that like button before you leave. And if you're new to this channel, you're just discovering this for the first time, and you've somehow made it to the end of a 40-minute rant of somebody talking like a complete asshole for the last 40 minutes, and you haven't turned off this video, and you're new, hit that subscribe button. Other than that, guys, appreciate every single one of you. And as always, I'll catch you on the next video.